Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. Well, we're coming close to the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, and we can all be excited for the return of Russell T Davies as head writer. With the exciting news we got last year of Russell T Davies returning to head write Doctor Who after Chris Chibnall left the scene, along with the return of David Tennant and Catherine Tate for the 60th anniversary trilogy, and Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor, we can all be excited for what's to come for Doctor Who now that Russell T Davies is back as head writer. We can all expect great stories, great aliens and great Dalek stories again. But with the 60th, the Christmas special and Series 14 on the way, I think it's a good time to talk about what I want to see in the future of Doctor Who. Yes, many Doctor Who fans had their own visions of what they would like to see in the future of the series, and I thought it'd be quite fun to share my thoughts on what I would like to see in the future of Doctor Who. And I'll start small by saying that I would like to see the return of the Roboforms from the Christmas Invasion and the Runaway Bride. These guys are really interesting robot species. They first appeared on the Christmas Invasion in 2005 disguised as robot Santas who came to take the Doctor and use his regeneration energy to power up their batteries. Then they made a surprise return in the Runaway Bride when they were after Donna Noble. It was in that special that we finally got to see what they actually looked like underneath the Santa Claus disguises. But after this, they wouldn't have another role again until the Pandorica opens when they were seen in the background with the Alliance. And that was about it. We never really saw the Roboforms again afterwards. And I think it would be really interesting to see another story with these guys. Learn more about where they came from and why they want to use the Doctor's regeneration energy to power their batteries for. I think Russell T Davies' return would be a great way to explore the lore of these guys. It would just be really nice to see them make a comeback. And because I'm such a great lover of Christmas, I really want to see them disguised as Santa Claus again. It'd be a lot of fun to see what kind of killer Christmas tree they'd come up with this time. I feel Russell T Davies' return would also be a good way to bring back the Autons and the Nesting Consciousness, since they hadn't been in a big storyline for Doctor Who since the first episode of the 2005 series Rose. And the last time we saw them on screen was in the Pandorica Opens when they disguised themselves as realistic Romans. But they weren't the main threat to that story, they were more of side characters. And it was the first time we saw them in a realistic human disguise compared to what we saw them disguised as Mickey Smith in Rose. What with how serious climate change is getting these days, I think that would be a perfect storyline for an Auton return. It just seems like the perfect story to have the plastic monsters make a comeback. Yeah, what with global warming and people not recycling as much these days, I think that would be a really good plot line to do with the Autons. Living in the modern world where people don't take recycling and global warming very seriously, and the Nesting Consciousness would use it to its advantage. And I think that makes sense since the Nesting Consciousness and the Autons are made out of plastic. So it would just be a great way to exploit this thing that's going on in real life and use it for an Auton storyline. If one of the spin-offs they've teased does happen to be a Cyberman spin-off, and I'm honestly expecting it to be a dark origin story for the Cybermen, or at least a dark twist on how the Cybermen work. Going into the dark details that they did in World Enough in Time, with the patients begging for death when they're in pain, and very possibly having something similar to what they did in the audio drama Spare Parts. If they did something like this in a Cyberman spin-off, then I'd imagine it would get a 15 rating, using body horror, the kind of stuff that we never got to explore in Doctor Who because it's a family show. I just think that would be a really great thing to explore for the older fans of Doctor Who, much like the kind of stuff that Torchwood would have. And speaking of spin-offs, with Russell T Davies back at the helm, I think it would be a good time for them to bring back Torchwood if that's possible. Yes, if it is at all possible, I would really love to see Torchwood make a comeback, since that was quite honestly one of the best Doctor Who spin-offs we've ever had. Taking Captain Jack Harkness, played by John Barrowman, a well-loved character, and making him the main character of this spin-off series that's more for the adult fans. Since they mentioned in Revolution of the Daleks that Jack was going to spend some time with Gwen, that really led to the possibility of a return for Torchwood, since we haven't seen them since the Miracle Day series. It's just a spin-off series that I would love to see back on our screens again. Ever since they were introduced in Series 1 in 2005, the Slovene family from Ratzokorka Falabatorius have been one of my favourite Doctor Who monsters. If you ignore their cute little baby faces, it is a really interesting concept. Aliens that kill humans and then use their skins as a disguise to infiltrate the British government. The Slovene have always been one of my favourite monsters in Doctor Who ever since I've started watching it in 2005. And I think it would really be great to see these aliens return since we haven't seen them on screen for so long. and they only made 2 major appearances in the show, and any other times they were only just mentioned or had short cameos. And they really got their footing when they were featured in the Sarah Jane Adventures spin-off as recurring villains, adding some more lore to the family, getting to see Slitheen children and their relatives, the Slitheen Blathery. We even got to learn more about their home planet and why they were wanted and put on the death penalty in the first place. One storyline I've had in my head for ages would be where the Doctor and his companion visits Raxacalcophallapatorius, gets caught up in a Raxacalcophallapatorian festival that the species go through every year, while a bunch of Slitheen family members infiltrate the planet to take over. I just think that would be a great opportunity to see more family members of the Raxacalcophallapatorians, and a possible return of the Blathery, since we haven't seen them since the Sarah Jane Adventures. I just think it would be a really nice storyline to have the Doctor and his companion visit Raxacalcophallapatorius, meet up with other Raxacalcophallapatorian families, see the Slitheen again, and potentially bring back the Judoon, since it was mentioned in Sarah Jane Adventures that the Slitheen actually had a history with the Judoon. So it would be really nice to see these big farting aliens make a comeback in the future. Another thing that I would kinda like to see come back would be these guys.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, God! Oh, Jesus, God! Oh, Mary, Mother of Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth! Calm down. I just gotta calm down. Okay. Give me one more look at the painting. Oh, God!
How did I know that was coming? Like many Doctor Who fans, I am aware of how hated the Paradigm Daleks were when they were first introduced in 2010, with nicknames being like Teletub Daleks, Power Ranger Daleks, Rainbow Daleks, whatever you want to call them. Even Stephen Moffat and the rest of the Doctor Who team at the time didn't like them as much. Not just because they were poorly received by the fans and critics, but because the models themselves were actually hard to work with because of their height. Which explains why they were eventually pushed to the sidelines by the Bronze Daleks, and then eventually erased from the show with no explanation to where they went. And I'm one of those fans that really wants to see an explanation to what happened to these guys. But if they were to come back, I would expect to see it in a similar story to the pilot from Series 10, when the Doctor and Bill Potts went back to the Dalek-Mavellan War. I just think it would be fun to have them go back in time to the Dalek Paradigm and the Children of Davros War. Similar to what they did with the Doctor Who experience when it first opened. Going into the Dalek spaceship and just to be confronted by the Paradigm Daleks, and then getting to see stock footage of Dalek Sec and the Cult of Skaro claiming themselves to be the Children of Davros. It would just be a really nice on-screen explanation to what happened to the Paradigm Daleks. Even though it's very unlikely since the BBC sold off the Paradigm models, I just think it would be really nice to see an explanation to where they went on TV screens. But I think the best we're going to have to settle for would be a Big Finish audio drama. And I'm sure many Doctor Who fans have already said this, but I would love to see a Dalek Cyberman rematch. And a lot of you are going to say, well, we already had Daleks versus Cyberman in Doomsday. But that was back in 2006. While Army of Ghosts and Doomsday is one of my favourite Doctor Who stories, as well as being our first ever Cyberman Dalek war, we have to admit that war was very one-sided, since the Cybermen were no match for the Time War Daleks. So I think now would be the perfect time to have a rematch, especially since the Cybermen have gone through upgrades since that episode. A lot has changed since we last saw this battle, so it would be really cool to see the Daleks face off against the Cyber Warrior Cybermen from the Chibnall era. Since the Cybermen had upgraded themselves since that appearance, it would be really nice to see how the Daleks fare up against these newer Cybermen. And I could only imagine the two species would probably be even matched at this point. So we'd have some Daleks shooting the Cybermen and killing them, and we'd possibly even have some Cybermen killing Daleks. Since it's been God knows how many years since the first Dalek-Cyberman war, I think Russell T Davies' return as head writer would be the right time to have the Daleks and Cybermen have a rematch and see how the Daleks would fare up against the newer, improved Cybermen. I just think it would be really awesome to see the Daleks go up against the Cyber Warriors, which is a design I want to see stick around for a few years. Another thing I'd love to see is an upgrade with the Daleks themselves. And I'm aware that some of you might go batshit crazy on this opinion, but it's just my opinion, so yeah. But I would really love to see the Time War Dalek designs keep up for the series, or at least have a couple of upgrades. And if they are going to keep the Bronze Daleks around for a lot of years, I expect to see some variety in them. Much like how we got some variety in them with the Death Squad Daleks and the Executioner Daleks with their new weapons. But if they're going to keep the Time War Daleks around, I really want to see some more variety in them, like with different colour schemes, like what we got during the Time Lord Victorious era of the show. And and I want to see a Dalek casing similar to Dalek Sec from the Cult of Skaro. Obviously not being Dalek Sec himself since he's, well, dead, but I think it would be cool to see a jet black Dalek be like a commander for Dalek armies. Unlike what the Paradigm Daleks were going for, have the different colours for Daleks show their ranks, like for strategists, the bronze drones, maybe some scientists, and a new Supreme Dalek. So if they don't want to change the Dalek designs, then by all means keep the Time War Dalek designs, but just give us some variety in their casings. Different colours, different weapons, new ranks, just do whatever you want with them. Just go wild with it, just give us some variety. And speaking of the Daleks, I would really love to see their creator Davros make a comeback sometime in the future. During New Who, he's appeared once in every era of the show except for the Chris Chibnall era, so I would really love to see him make a return in the future of the show, as well as being replayed again by Julian Bleach, since that's my favourite actor to play Davros. And I would also really love to see a sequel to him meeting Missy in Series 9, since they met each other very briefly before they made their escape, but it was very brief and they didn't get much time to interact with each other. So I would love to see Davros be reacquainted with the Master in a new reincarnation or as the Sacha Dhawan Master. I think that would be a match made in hell. It would just be great to see these two great villains of the Doctors play off against each other, and I think it'd be really fun to see them get into disagreements with each other because of their different personalities and their different agendas for the universe. It would just be really awesome to see, as well as being a nice sequel to that build-up we had in The Witch is Familiar. Make it happen, Russell T. And while it's unlikely we'll see the Master return anytime soon, since he's been very frequent in the Chris Chibnall era, I'm one of those people who really wants to see Sacha Dhawan return as the character, either in a mainstream episode or in a multi-Master story. Even though John Sim will always be my favourite incarnation of the Master, I just love how insane and maniacal and bloodthirsty Sacha Dhawan's incarnation of the Renegade Time Lord is. And Sacha Dhawan recently said in an interview that he would love to return as Master in Russell T Davies' era. Since Sacha Dhawan recently stated that he'd love to return as the Master since he feels the character has unfinished business, then I'm all up for another return for the character, either as a standalone story or another multi-Master episode. But I imagine Russell T Davies would probably want to give the Master a rest for a while, since he has this tendency to not overuse monsters unless he thinks that he has good potential for their stories. Of course, we all know he had the Daleks show up in every series in his era, but he always had really good stories written for them, and he knew not to overuse other classic monsters. So yeah, let the Master have a break for a while, but when he does return, I'd love to see Sacha Dhawan have another outing against the Doctors. And while I'm not expecting the Sontarans to make a big appearance again, since we already had a big appearance from them in the Flux miniseries, but when they do make a comeback, I really would like to see their appearances that they had during the Flux. As much as I love their Russell T Davies era appearances, I really have grown accustomed to their appearance from the Chris Chibnall era. Their armour is just a really nice callback to classic Who. And I so desperately want to see Christopher Vine return as a Sontaran General or Commander and play alongside the new Sontarans that we saw in Series 13, aka the Floods. That would make an awesome pairing. I think it would be a great dynamic to see him play along the actor who played Commander Skark in the Flux series. I think those two would have great chemistry as Sontarans. Speaking of big bads of Doctor Who, I see no reason why they can't bring back Rassilon, since we hadn't seen him since Hellbent in Series 9. In New Who, he was first played by Timothy Dalton, former James Bond actor in The End of Time Part 1 and Part 2. Then in Hellbent he was played by Donald Sumpter, who many Doctor Who fans will remember in the Sarah Jane Adventures when he played Erasmus Darkening in The Eternity Trap. And he really did play the role superbly, but I just prefer Timothy Dalton over him. And it would make sense for him to come back in the future since he left Gallifrey sometime before it was destroyed by the Master. So it is likely that he's still roaming about the galaxy somewhere, plotting his revenge against the Doctor for throwing him off his planet. And if he is brought back in Doctor Who, I'd expect to either have Donald Sumpter come back to play the character, or to have a new actor play him since he's regenerated probably. And if Rassilon does regenerate in a future story, here's a couple of actors who I think would make good candidates for a future incarnation. Daniel Craig, because I think he's got such a charm and charisma that he could put it off really well. And he got to play the main villain in The Adventures of Tintin, which I'm still waiting for a sequel for. Yeah, seriously guys, let's talk about this, it's been 12 years. Anyway, Ian McDiarmid because of his role as Palpatine, and I think he'd make a great diabolical and hammy version of Rassilon. Jeremy Irons because I loved his role in The Lion King as Scar, and he just has a slimy, charming voice that I really would love to hear for Rassilon. Lars Mikkelsen because of his performance as Grand Admiral Thrawn in Star Wars Rebels and the upcoming Ahsoka, and his performance in the Sherlock TV series with Benedict Cumberbatch. I just think he's got the looks and the voice to play a future incarnation of Rassilon. Liam Neeson, partially because of his role as Ra's al Ghul in the Dark Knight trilogy. He just has this way of playing nasty characters who are charming at the same time. And Ralph Fiennes because of his performance as Lord Voldemort in the Harry Potter franchise. Again, this guy has a really charming voice, and yet he can also play diabolical characters. I just think that list of actors would make a good Rassilon. Just my opinion, of course. If you could think of any other actors who would make a great Rassilon, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I think it would also be great to see the Sycorax make a return, since they haven't had a big role in the show since their first appearance in the Christmas Invasion. After that, they were just reduced to short cameo appearances, like in the Pandorica Opens when they were part of the Alliance. So I think it would be a really nice idea to have them return and explore more of their species and possibly go to their home planet. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who thinks this, but I think it might be nice if they did a sequel to the Christmas Invasion, showing their reactions to some of their species being destroyed in their visit to Earth. Another thing I'd love to see in the new Russell T Davies area is how he would handle the Silurians and the Sea Devils. The Silurians were an alien that didn't get revived for the show until the Stephen Moffat era, and the Sea Devils came back near the end of the Chris Chibnall era. So I for one think it would be really cool to see these two aliens side by side with each other, since I heard that they did that a couple of times in the Classic series. But I don't know for certain because I haven't watched the Classic series episodes with Silurians or Sea Devils, so correct me if I'm wrong or right on that one. I just think it would be really nice to see how Russell T Davies handles the Silurians and the Sea Devils, two classic monsters that were introduced during the John Pertwee era. It would just be great to see what he does with them. And it'd be a nice way to bring back Katie Manning if she ever wants to come back to the show. Another awesome addition to Doctor Who, in my opinion, would be the Trickster from the Sarah Jane Adventures. This guy was a reoccurring big villain for that spin-off series, and the moment where he got to meet the 10th Doctor in the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith is just an awesome moment, and it really makes you want to see him in the future of the series. He's just an awesome villain who only appeared 3 times in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and I think he would make a really great addition to the main Doctor Who series. There's so many possibilities for future Doctor Who stories as well as monsters to make a comeback. And I just felt it'd be fun to share some of my thoughts and see what you guys had to say about it. Doctor Who is one of my favourite shows of all time, and I really want to see it be a success again with Russell T Davies at the helm, and I have every confidence that it will make the show great again. And if anyone on the Doctor Who team happens to come across this video, then I do recommend that you take my ideas into consideration, because there are so many potentials for the show that I really do want to see, and I'm sure all you other Whovians out there would love to see some stuff come to the show too. So if you have any opinions on what you want to see in the future of the show, leave it in the comments section below and just make your own videos, share your opinions. It's just really great to think of all the possibilities for Doctor Who in the future. All these storylines and monster comebacks that we could potentially get. Doctor Who is a show all about change, and we want to see some great changes in the show, and it's just great to share my opinions and thoughts on what could potentially happen in the show in the future. Just potential ideas for future storylines, monster returns, and just anything to make the show great again like it was back in the Russell T Davies 0.1. So share your thoughts out there and see what everyone has to say. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.